Welcome, everyone. Today, we are getting into the nitty-gritty of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Look, it's fast becoming the new fuel of choice for the entire maritime industry, so knowing what makes it tick isn't just nice to have anymore, it's absolutely essential. And if you need proof, just look at this. In 2024, that's right, 50% of all new ship tonnage ordered was for ships running on alternative fuels. And guess who's leading that charge? Yep, LNG. This isn't some far-off future trend, folks. It is happening right now. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about why LNG is such a big deal now. Then we'll dive into the cool science behind it, literally. After that, we'll cover how it behaves, vapor, fire risk, and something called bog. We'll look at the hazards, both cold and combustion, and then, crucially, how we manage and reduce those risks. And we'll wrap it all up with the key things you need to remember. All right, let's kick things off. Section 1. Shipping's new reality. To really work with this stuff safely and efficiently, you've just got to understand the basics of this super-cooled gas. So what is LNG at its heart? It's actually pretty simple. You take natural gas, which is mostly methane, and you get it incredibly cold. We're talking minus 162 degrees Celsius, or minus 260 Fahrenheit. That extreme cold is what turns it from a gas into a liquid that we can actually transport. Okay, now for the science. Because these core properties, they literally dictate everything. Everything from how we store it and move it to the very specific risks that come along with it.
Now, we say LNG is methane, but it's not quite that simple. It's mostly methane, sure, but there are also little bits of other stuff in there, like ethane and propane. And those other components, they actually matter. They change the fuel's quality and how it behaves in an engine. That's where something called the methane number comes in. It's basically a score for how well the fuel resists engine knock. Higher is better.
Okay, I want you to just look at this number for a second. 1 to 600. If there is one single thing you remember about the physics of LNG, this is it. The implications here are just massive. This, my friends, is the expansion ratio. It means 1 unit of liquid LNG becomes 600 units of gas when it warms up. To give you an idea of what that looks like, imagine a single basketball full of liquid LNG. If you let that warm up, it would expand to fill an entire 3-bedroom house with natural gas. That's incredible for storing a lot of energy in a small space, right? But it also means even a tiny liquid spill can create a massive, dangerous cloud of flammable gas. Which brings us perfectly to how this stuff behaves out in the real world, when it's not perfectly contained. We're about to talk vapor, flammability, and this constant headache called BOG. So, for methane to catch fire, it needs just the right recipe. Think of it like a Goldilocks situation. If there's less than 5% methane in the air, there's not enough fuel. It's too lean. More than 15%, there's not enough oxygen. It's too rich. The danger zone, the part we really care about, is that sweet spot right in between, 5 to 15%. That's where you have a fire risk. All right, let's talk about bog. Because LNG is kept so incredibly cold, a little bit of heat from the outside world is always trying to get in. No insulation is perfect. And that tiny bit of heat causes a little bit of the LNG to constantly turn back into a gas. It literally boils off. This isn't a malfunction, it's just physics. And all that boil-off gas has to go somewhere, or the pressure inside the tank would build up to dangerous levels. Now this is one of the trickiest things about LNG. Right when it leaks, that vapor is super cold, so it's actually heavier than air. It'll sink, hug the deck, and pool in low spots. But as it starts to warm up, once it gets past about minus 110 Celsius, it flips. It becomes lighter than air and starts to rise and scatter. Knowing this behavior is absolutely critical if you're trying to figure out where a gas cloud might go. Okay, we've got the properties down. Now let's connect the dots to the actual hazards. With LNG, the risks really boil down to 2 big categories. Dangers from the extreme cold and dangers from the fact that it can, burn. And there's that number again, minus 162 degrees Celsius. You have to burn this into your brain. This incredible cold is the root cause of every single cryogenic hazard we're about to talk about. So that cold creates a double-edged threat. First, there's the danger to people. Any contact with the liquid will cause instant, severe cryogenic burns. Think of it like a frostbite burn, but much, much worse. For the ship itself, the danger is just as serious. Regular steel, the kind most ships are made of, becomes as brittle as glass at these temperatures. A splash of LNG could literally cause the deck to shatter. That's why anything that touches LNG has to be made of special materials, like stainless steel.
And then, of course, there's the fire. We're not just talking about a simple flame. A high-pressure leak can create a jet fire, like a giant blowtorch. A spill can form a pool fire. Then you have the really big ones, a bleave, which is a catastrophic tank explosion, and a bizarre event called a rollover.
So what on earth is rollover? Imagine the LNG inside a tank forming layers, kind of like a fancy cocktail, with denser liquid at the bottom. Heat seeps in and warms that bottom layer, but it gets trapped. Then, all of a sudden, those layers can violently mix. The superheated bottom layer instantly flashes into a massive amount of vapor. So much, so fast, that it can overwhelm the safety valves and cause a catastrophic failure.
Okay, enough doom and gloom. We know the hazards. Now, how do we stop them from happening? Let's talk about the tools and strategies for keeping LNG operations safe. It really comes down to having layers of protection.
First, let's remember why we're doing this. This chart says it all. Compared to old-school heavy fuel oil, LNG slashes emissions across the board. Sulfur oxides, gone. Nitrogen oxides, way down. CO2, cut by up to 25%. So the trade-off is pretty clear. We're swapping one set of familiar risks for a new set of hazards that we simply have to master.
And this is how we master them. It's a defense in-depth approach. You start by systematically identifying every possible hazard. Then you engineer controls right into the ship, things like double-walled pipes and automatic shutdown systems. You add on top of that strict, non-negotiable procedures for things like bunkering. You actively manage that boil-off gas we talked about. And finally, the most important layer of all, you make sure the crew is expertly trained and knows the stuff inside and out.
So let's wrap this up. What are the absolute key points you need to walk away with today to really understand the fundamentals of LNG?
If you take away nothing else, remember these 4 things. 1, it's super cooled, down to -162 Celsius. 2, it has that massive 600-to-1 expansion ratio. 3, its dangers come from 2 directions, the extreme cold and its flammability. And 4, control is absolutely everything. Safety is a 3-legged stool. Great engineering, strict rules, and a crew that knows exactly what they're doing. And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? LNG is undeniably a cleaner path forward for shipping, but it's a demanding fuel. It requires a new level of skill and constant, unwavering vigilance. So as LNG goes from niche to mainstream, we have to ask, is the industry really truly ready to master these risks?